Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you are safe at home and coping with the new situation. I'm Ilyas Nicholas, the Cleantech specialist at Berytech, and I'll be your host for today. As you all know, we are facing major issues in the cleantech sector, and we need to start acting upon. So we need to create a supportive community of experts, partners, NGOs, public and private sectors to help and support startups and entrepreneurs to work in the cleantech sector and to help them answer not only local but also regional and international needs in the sector. The Cleantech learning series are organized by Berytech under the Clean Energy program, which is funded by the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Lebanon. Let me briefly introduce you to the Clean Energy Accelerator. So this accelerator basically aims at supporting ideas and startups working on solutions to the challenges that exist in the cleantech sector. So the team will have to tackle challenges in transportation, energy, water, waste, or agriculture. Through this program, Berytech will offer the selected startups the resources, the knowledge, the support, and the funding necessary to scale and grow. If you're interested, you can check additional information and eligibility criteria on our website, berytech.org. You can go to Programs section and select Clean Energy. The deadline to apply for the first batch of the Clean Energy Accelerator is beginning of June. So if you think you have an innovative solution in the cleantech sector, I urge you to check the website and submit your application. The Clean Technology Learning Series will happen every Tuesday in April on Zoom. So we will have every week different guest speakers and entrepreneurs discussing the challenges faced in the cleantech sector, specifically in the waste management, water and wastewater management, and energy. This will the Q&A at the end of each session. We will be doing it on Slido. I'll be sharing with you on the chat a link in which you can click and write down your questions, and the presenter will be able to answer it at the end of its presentation. I would like to thank our guest speaker and entrepreneurs who are joining us today in our webinar. We will be hosting Ronald Richa, Mario Goraieb, Ghassan LeGrand, Pierre Elzouki, Salah Tabbara, and Menna Sabry. For the first session, which is on waste management, I would like to welcome our two guest speakers, Ronald Richa and Mario Goraieb. We will first start with our expert in waste management, Ronald Richa, who is the Industrial Business Development Director at Veolia Middle East. Ronald covers a wide range of industrial projects, mainly in the oil and gas sector, providing sustainable solutions in water production, wastewater treatment, and hazardous waste management. Recently, he also started a new business to enhance plastic recycling and circular economy. Ronald has 20 years of experience in the environmental sector. He served several industrial companies providing tailor-made and sustainable solutions. He also worked as an environmental consultant and had several assignments with big corporations. Ronald, we thank you for answering our invitation, and we're glad to have you with us in this Cleantech learning series. I will leave you to lead on your presentation. You're free to start presenting.
Thank you, Ilyas. Thank you, Ilyas. Is my voice okay? Can you hear me well?
Yes, we're hearing you very well.
Okay. Before sharing my screen, maybe thank you for the introduction. Very briefly, I work for Veolia currently. For those who doesn't know Veolia, Veolia is the world leader in environmental services. We are in more than 70 countries, and we address all the challenges related to water treatment, waste management, and energy efficiency. I've been working for Veolia for the last 20 years, and I'm currently, as you said, BD director, and I'm working in plastic recycling and currently living in Dubai. When we were preparing this presentation, we had a lot of topics that were interested to present about plastic, about recycling, and so on. And then at a certain point, we come up saying, and what about oil and gas? You know, I would say it's a hot topic in Lebanon, the oil and gas sector. And we said, okay, it's a good opportunity maybe to present the waste management in the oil and gas, as it's not something that people are well aware of. It's something that is ever changing. It follows the oil and gas trends. It follows the oil and gas companies, and we at Veolia have a big knowledge and a long track record in the oil and gas management. So this is where I want to focus my presentation, is how to manage waste in oil and gas, and what are the, let's say, the hot and key topics on that. Let me share my screen. You see something or not?
Not yet. It's loading. Yes, now we can see.
Now you can see. Okay, so let's start the presentation. What I start, I will present, the main highlights of the waste management in oil and gas. Maybe a little bit define what is the oil and gas sector. It's a broad definition of oil and gas, what you're talking about, and which sector inside the oil and gas I will explain why, and I will explain what is upstream in oil and gas, but I will focus on the upstream waste management, the waste management in the upstream sector, because it is somehow the sector that will be developed, hopefully, in the future in Lebanon. I will address a little bit also the upstream produced water, and maybe it would be a good introduction for my colleague Ghassan, who will come after, to talk about the water management, and try to summarize with some takeaways. I want to insist on one point here. I'm not here to add on the controversies regarding the oil and gas in Lebanon. I'm not at all an oil and gas specialist, and I'm not a hydrocarbon engineer or hydrocarbon manufacturing engineer. I'm an environmental engineer. So whether we'll find gas in Block 4 or we don't find, I don't know, and I'm not here to give my opinion. I'm here maybe just to raise awareness about what is the waste management in oil and gas, what are the challenges, and what are the best practices. Maybe people around the table will be interested and find opportunities in addressing these challenges locally or nationally. I will focus on the upstream, as I said before, and I will explain why after. But before I start, maybe we have to come back to the fundamentals in waste management. The fundamentals in waste management is always starts with regulations. Regulations are of essence in waste management, and whether we are in a company, whether we are lobbyists, whether we work in an NGO, or whether we work in a ministry, we have all our role in forging or in building the regulations. And this is something important. Without regulation, we cannot talk about waste management. We cannot talk about hazardous waste management. Everything starts with regulation. So all the solution and all the challenges has to meet, or the solution has to meet the local regulations and criteria by the local government. This is first. The second, for all oil and gas companies, and this is something, the sustainability in oil and gas is becoming the top priority. It may be a little bit, let's say, contradictory. Say, yes, they're producing oil, so it's they're producing solid, fossil fuel, so therefore they participate to the greenhouses and so on. Yes, but because of the type of industry they are working on, they are more and more aware, and they are more and more, they want the oil and gas company wants more and more to abide to more stringent environmental regulations and standards. And the example of BP in the Gulf of Mexico a few years ago, the water platform, shows clearly what are the liabilities that an oil and gas company can have if they have an accident or they don't abide with some basic environmental regulations. And it's a matter of sustaining the business, not only doing sustainability, but sustaining the business and creating the business. So the impact, the environmental impact and the sustainability is at the top level agenda of the audit. 3, creation of value. Yes, there is value inside waste, and we can see it in the different aspects of waste. In recycling, we create value. In hazardous waste, we create value. We create value in all types of waste management. If we say, I want just to treat and to dispose, it's good. I mean, we're just stabilizing the waste itself. We're just preventing it from harming the nature, from leaking to the nature. But if we want to push a little bit more, we start reusing, we start recycling, we are creating value. And by the creation of value, we create a kind of win-win situation. A win for the company, win for the society, and win for the environment. And this is very, very important. So with the trend that we are seeing today, more and more is going more from disposing just putting it in a cell and keeping it, or having a kind of engineered landfill, to going more towards recycling, going more high value added solutions in order to create this value that we. So these are the fundamentals, the principles I wanted to start my presentation with before I address the rest of it. What is the oil and gas value chain or oil and gas sector? There is the first, what we call the upstream. The upstream is the exploration and production of oil or of gas. So there is, this is where we have these oil fields or gas fields, where the oil companies, whether national oil or international oil, you can see all these rigs and all these wells, oil wells, where we go very deep to extract the oil or extract the gas. This is what we call the upstream. It could be conventional or non-conventional. Then when it's extracted, this oil or this gas should be treated. When I say treated, cleaned. We have to remove the salt, we have to remove from the oil the water, other type of things. From the gas, we have to remove the sulfur, we have to remove other type of intrusion. And this is what we call the middle or the midstream. Then we have the refining. So the refining is where so there's the storage, then the refining, where we start separating the different molecules inside the oil and recombining them. Then we have the petrochemical, and then we have the chemistry. So oil and gas, it's a very, very large, let's say, definition for each and every step of the oil and gas sector. We can find the specific challenges linked to waste management, linked to water management, specific environmental challenges. I want to focus on the upstream, as I said earlier, because I believe, and it's not my belief on, but it's a new topic in Lebanon. Everybody is talking about the exploration that Total is currently doing. It's an offshore exploration, but it's an initiative, or it's something that might put Lebanon in the oil and gas, let's say, as an oil and gas country, or oil or gas producer country. And I believe that it's important to understand what are the challenges related to waste management. First thing first, a quick reminder. Everything starts by the seismic acquisition. So it's all technologies consisting of, let's say, sending shock waves in the soil layers and having probes to capture these shock waves and to analyze how these layers in the soil are composed of. The porosity, the type of rocks, the type of reservoirs, the densities, and so on. So this is the seismic acquisition, and this is what has been done in Lebanon. And it gives a probability. It shows that, yes, in this area, there might be a reservoir. And this is where geologists comes and have a lot of theories and start doing some studies about how the geology of the land, and when it was made and so on. But nothing happened until the exploration started. Why I'm saying that? Not because I want to focus on oil and gas. All these steps mobilize people, mobilize equipment, mobilize a lot of people and equipment and products and consumables and so on. So generates a lot of waste. These waste could be, let's say, general waste, because there are people. And for example, onshore, I've been involved in one onshore field, the development of one onshore field. At a certain point, there were 15,000 people in the development of this field. So all these people go, they have shower, etc. So they generate general waste, but also to develop an offshore, there is the drilling, and we'll talk about the drilling. There's the fracking process. The fracking process consists of fracking the rock in order to extract gas. There are a lot of processes that can involve either water or other type of chemicals and generate water or other type of waste. So these steps are important to understand and understand what happens during these steps in order to be able to address the waste that can be generated and treat them. Then the phase of exploration starts, and with the phase of exploration starts the drilling. We'll talk about the drilling later on. And we discover gas or we discover oil. So we start managing the reservoir. We manage the reservoir by injecting gases and water to keep the pressure and to enhance the pressure, and by using pumps and by extracting the oil and the gas. So these are processes that most of the time use big quantities of water and different type of water. There are a lot of technologies in the oil, for example, production, where we maintain the pressure of the reservoir by injecting water. The water could be water, fresh water. It could be salt water. It could be what we call the low salt technology, low salinity water. So we have to prepare a kind of specific salinity water, injecting it. It could be steam. So these technologies could use huge amounts of water, and it can have a huge environmental impact while using water. When you say using water, it means pumping into a water, let's say a water aquifer or water lake or river or whatever, and producing a lot of water that could be polluted with. So basically, these are the main principles. Now, if we come back to the drilling process, the drilling process is a complex process. The principle is simple, but the drilling itself is a very complex process. Because first of all, it could be vertical and horizontal. It can take any direction. Second, it can go very, very deep, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 meters. Even more sometimes in non-conventional areas, but also it involves many things at the same time, which is the head of the driller that is taking and that is crushing the rock. Inside the drill bit, we inject mud. This mud could be oil-based or water-based. This mud has three roles. The first role is, first of all, to control the temperature at the drill bit. Since there's a lot of friction, there's high temperature. The second is to stabilize the well for not collapsing. So this is why we put in this mud some specific components like bentonite, for example. And three, it has the role of densifier. It meaning by that, it brings all the small rocks, the soil material that has been crushed to the top of the well during the drilling process. And this is exactly the waste stream or the byproduct stream that can have a harmful impact on the environment, because these muds that contains a lot of rocks that we call cutting in the terminology could be mixed with chemical product, with oil. The oil can come from the oil that we use inside that we mix with the sludge, but can be made of the oil that we encounter while drilling. And until like 5-10 years ago, this mud and these cuttings and these rocks were thrown. For example, here in Saudi Arabia, etc., was put between two dunes. In Europe or in offshore, it was thrown directly to the sea, or in the US, on other places in the earth, was dumped. It was dumped, simply dumped. And it contains a lot of contaminants that could leak into the environment, that could leak into the aquifers, and so on. And this is why it was very important to start treating these waste streams. For your information, a well could produce, depending for sure on the size of the well, on the depth of the well, between 500 to 3,000 tons of this kind of cuttings and muds. This means that there are places, fields where we have 1,000 well, 2,000 well. So it's a huge amount of waste streams that need to be treated and needs to stabilize in order not to leak into the environment. And this is one of the main challenge when it comes to exploration, is how to treat them. If it's offshore, how to bring them onshore and to treat them onshore. There are a lot of technologies, there are a lot of know-how in that, but there are also a lot of logistics that is involved. And once treated, what we it's a little bit technical, but what I wanted just to show you is that we can reduce the quantity of mud by recycling this mud in a closed loop, and whatever the remaining in terms of rocks, cuttings, and so on, we can use a technology called thermal desorption technology in order to clean this solid mattress and to do something out of it. In Veolia, and we have a lot of experience in that, and we use it mainly, or we produce mainly out of it some construction material. The bentonite is a very fine material. The bentonite that we put inside the sludge is a very fine material with a very good characteristic. It's a clay. It's a kind of clay. Can create smooth surfaces. So we use it as a construction material. We use it for parkings, we use it for a lot of things, but we need for sure to stabilize it, and we need to. It can be used also as fillers for the roads. It can be used as fillers for embankments and so on. So this is something that we also have experience where we created bricks out of this kind of material. There are a lot of things we can do out of it, and there are a lot of opportunities for the treatment of such a material. First of all, in terms of lowering down the environmental footprint, and second, in terms of producing these byproducts and sometimes selling them or giving them for local use. The second interesting and challenging aspect, and I think there are not a lot of people who knows about it, is what we call the norm. Norm is the terminology of naturally occurring radioactive material. Yes, there are some radioactivity that we can find in the oil and gas. We're not talking about nuclear bombs, and it's not everywhere. It can be on some specific fields, depending on the layers, the earth layers, the earth crust, and the presence of these radioactive elements that are naturally present in the earth crust. In all the earth, in all the layers, there are some radioactivity. The problem starts when we have this accumulation phenomenon. Actually, in the exploration phase and in the production phase, we are extracting the oil. And with the oil, as we said, there are sands, there are soil that are coming out. And all these components goes to what we call GOS. It's gas oil separation unit. This is where we separate the oil from the water from the gas. And there's also a solid fraction, and everything goes in pipes, and there are scales that are developed in these pipes. These scales are exactly the concentration phenomena where we concentrate the radioactivity, and after a certain level, it becomes dangerous for people. And now radioactivity, it's a matter of radiation times time of exposure times the type of radiation. So if it's a very low radioactivity, very, very low, in some cases it's few becquerel, but it's also a matter of exposure. So if we have the same person that is exposed on long period to this radioactivity, it can be harmful for him. And this is where the oil and gas company, and we can see it even here in the Middle East, companies like ADNOC, like company, and so on, they are very concerned about these challenges, and they have put in place specific solution in order to detect, monitor, and treat these radioactivities inside the pipes and the all type of pipes. So this is something that is more and more recurring when we go very deep, when we go in different soil characteristics and so on. We can have radioactivity, and over time this radioactivity will be concentrated and will become harmful. So what are the solutions that we bring in this case? First of all, there's monitoring. We need to measure. We need to see what is the level. And the World Health Organization has defined some thresholds. Once again, we're talking very low radioactivity, but there are some thresholds that the World Health Organization considers as challenging, as could have some harm and generate risks to the people that could be exposed on a long-term period. So we start by monitoring. We start by testing and segregating what is contaminated with what is not contaminated. Then we protect our people, for sure. There are. I mean, like we see today with the COVID-19, there are protections to be taken. So for the radioactivity, same. Then we descale. So we treat. As we saw before, the radioactivity is on the scale, so we try to remove the scale, we try to concentrate it, and we try to treat those equipment to bring them back to the oil and gas producer, and we concentrate the sludge on, or whatever comes out of this radioactivity, and we dispose it safely, or we incinerate it. So this is also another challenge that we can face when we talk about oil and gas. It's not systematic, it's not everywhere, but it could be the case in several fields. Then when we extract the oil and we bring it to this GOSP, we separate the different phases of the oil. So the different phases are the gases phases, the copper that we take. The companies used to flare it. Today, most of the companies doesn't want to flare it. They want to use every drop of hydrocarbon, let's say, in the gas. Then the one in the middle is the oil, and on the bottom we have the solid part, and we have the water. This water is called produced water, and we'll talk about it later on. Yes, there's water coming out with the oil, and sometimes there's a lot of water coming out of the oil, and this water needs to be depolluted, and we need to find something to do with the water, because you will see after we might see in some cases a huge amount of water coming out. And we have the solid part, which are the sludge. For the sludge, there are a lot of solutions to, and the sludge could be generated in the GOSP, or could be generated also in the terminal, in the tankers, in the tanks, or storage. For the sludge, there's a lot of technologies, and there's a lot of ways to deal with the sludge. What's important, first of all, is to separate the water from the solid from the oil. This is what we call the tricanters technologies, or centrifuges. Once we separate them, we can send back the oil to the oil and gas company. We can use the soil, we can send it to a thermal desorption, for example, and use it as a construction material. And the oil could be treated and used for other uses. There are other, mainly, for example, in refineries, Veolia has developed different technologies and developed expertise in order to use the different phases of the sludge inside the refinery and reduce the quantities of solid to be disposed in landfills. Because, as you know, almost everywhere in the world, the cost of the landfilling, so of disposing in the landfill, is picking up. So it's becoming more and more expensive to send our waste to landfills, and this is why the companies and the oil and gas companies are trying to find alternative, not to send the waste to landfill, and try to recycle them on site. So this is for the now for the produced water, and I find this very interesting. For example, the closest to us is Oman, In Oman, the water to oil ratio, what is the water to oil ratio? Is the quantity of water that we produce every time we produce 1 barrel of oil. In Oman, the water to oil ratio is today around 20. So for 1 barrel of oil, Oman produced 20 barrels of water. And I was in a conference one year ago, and there were one CEO of one leading international oil company saying, are we oil producer or water producer? Because there are on some fields and some aging fields that are producing much more water than they are producing oil. And they need to find a solution, a sustainable solution, because obviously this water contains a lot of contaminants. It contains oil, it contains other contaminants, and it sometimes contains high quality of salt and big amounts of they need to deal with. So if we consider today the overall, the worldwide production of crude oil of 80 barrels per day, with this water to oil ratio of 3, roughly 1 million cubic meter per day of water. So if we consider in 2023 that the current fields will be aging and producing more water, roughly 500 million cubic meter per day of water to be managed. 500 million cubic meter per day is the consumption of 2 billion equivalent inhabitants. It doesn't mean that we'll take this water and send it to the people to drink it. No, not that I want to give. I want to say that it's a big challenge that the oil and gas company will be is facing, and will be more and more facing, what to do with all this water, how to handle it, and is there any chance to recycle it and to put it back in the fields. So basically, yes, water, as I said, water is needed in oil and gas. As we said, it is used to inject, keep the field under pressure in order to be able to produce. Produced water has to be handled in a costly, efficient way. And the quantities of produced water that are increasing by the aging of the fields is a challenge that oil and gas companies are looking to address, and Veolia is working with them closely to address challenges. I hope Ghassan will present a few solutions that we are able to bring. We need to find, with the oil and gas, a way to close the loop locally. In recycling, and this is also a principle in recycling, closing the loop on a worldwide level is never an option. It could be a temporary option, but we always need to close the loop locally. Yes, water is valuable. Most of the places where we have oil, we don't have water, so it's valuable, and water we need it, so we need to find a solution. In terms of takeaways, I will put myself in the shoes of the oil and gas company. Being able to manage efficiently the waste is also something that will impact their production efficiency. In terms of cost, the cost is increasing. The environmental challenges are more and more stringent, and therefore the costs are increasing. And as you can see, 1 week ago, the price of the barrel in the stock market was around $7 or $8. So it doesn't even cover the basics, the basic production cost. So if we add on the top of it the management of the water, the management of the waste, it needs to be handled efficiently and in a cost-efficient manner. It's a bottleneck. The waste could be a bottleneck, like for waste of produced water, like for drilling. If there are stringent environmental regulations, oil and gas company will not be able to explore, will not be able to increase its production if it doesn't have the capacity to address this challenge. So it can have an impact on the yield. It can have an impact. License to operate, very, very important, and it's very linked to the regulation, local regulations. In order to have the possibility to operate, oil and gas companies has to abide by local regulations, and to abide by it and to have the license to operate, they need to put in place some solution for the waste. And branding and CSR, if you go to the site of Total, BP, Shell, all of them, they have KPIs. They are committed. They are committed towards sustainability, and therefore they want to show that they are doing something on the waste side, on the water side, on the. That's it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ronald, for this great presentation. So we will move now to the Q&As. So for the attendees, anyone who has a question to Ronald, please use the link that we've been sharing on the chat window. So you can go to slido.com and use the code 47485 for you to ask questions to Ronald. Let me share the screen while you are guys ask your questions. So you can see, you can go to slido.com and write down this ID 47485 for you to be able to ask questions to Ronald. So Ronald, from Lebanon perspective, so we know we have Veolia working on these kind of applications, but are there like any players in the market regarding the like the handling of the waste coming out from the oil and gas industry?
Obviously, there are players that are interested in the Lebanese market. I participated last year to the Lebanon Oil and Gas yearly workshop seminar that is organized by the Lebanese Oil Corporation. And there are some regional companies from Cyprus and even some local investors that are interested in managing the waste in Lebanon that is coming up from the exploration phase and hopefully in the future from the production phase. Now, I mean, between the interest and the reality, the implementation, there are a lot of steps. First of all, we need to find oil or we need to find gas. This is very, very, very important. Second, we need to, or the local authorities, we need to involve these companies at early stages. Because there are a lot of decisions, whether logistics or treatment decisions and so on, that cannot be improvised later on. So these companies need to be involved. They need to be give their let's say their feedback and see what are the technologies and share with the local authorities about the technology that exists and so on. But before, as I said, it's about regulation. Regulation. What are the regulations? What are the environmental regulations that will be implemented for the oil and gas and so on, in order to give the guarantees for investors like Veolia, big companies like Veolia, to come and bring its own knowledge and know-how and technologies. And this is it's a very important topic. What are the regulations and what are the guarantees given by the local authorities for this regard? Yes, there are players that are interested. I think there are many of them. There are players who has some interesting experience, but when you ask someone to come and to invest time and money, it's different than saying I'm interested. You need to encourage them and you need to give them guarantees.
Great. So the last chance, guys, for any question for Ronald. So I believe that's it. Thank you so much, Ronald, for joining us.
Thank you.
Great. Looking forward for all the opportunities that this field will open up, specifically in Lebanon. So let's move to our next speaker for today. Welcome, Mario. So Mario Goraieb is our guest field expert. So Mario is the Environment Program Manager at Arcenciel. He has a professional career for over 10 years in program management and contract negotiations and policy analysis strategies, and community management experience in competitive industries and successful companies. He negotiated with municipalities, ministries, and private sector ways of waste management implementation, and he managed and planned, crafted and worked on developing waste management approaches, strategies, and technologies to suit municipalities and various private stakeholders. Thank you, Mario, for joining us.
Hello, Lias. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for hosting Arcenciel within this webinar.
We're hearing you well, and if you want, you can enable your video, and you can go ahead and start presenting your screen.
Yes, sure. I will be starting sharing my screen, and please advise if it's visible or not.
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay.
I can see it.
It was interesting what Ronald just came through regarding the oil and gas sector related to waste management. And this actually only grows up my fear personally about what is being done or what has been done already with the waste generated from the first drilling in the block number 4. There is no transparency at all with what happened over there. And beside the draft paper or the policy brief or the public policy that was developed by the LPA regarding the waste management, on the government level, there are no regulation, nor laws, nor norms or criteria developed just for the oil and gas sector, which is really new. And especially after the talk of Robin, which was really detailed and clear, it's really worrying to know that at the block number 4, not even an EIA was done to assess what could be the damage done to the environment, knowing that it's a case, the oil and gas could be an additional problem to Lebanon, more maybe than an added value, especially if environmentally speaking, it's not well managed. And especially, it's a bit weird to see that not even in EIA. Yesterday, a colleague corrected me. We're not talking about an EIA, but about a strategic EIA, especially that it's a new sector, it's a new field to Lebanon, to the government authorities, to the ministries, and to the private and public sector as a whole to tackle such issues. That said, I will get into the presentation. As you can see in the picture, لبنان يا أخضر حلو. Well, aside some little forests from here and there, actually this is our shitty situation. The picture you're seeing now, it's when the work started on the engineered landfill of Karantina and the Jdeide, when the waste was used to create this 200,000 square meter of land. It's really impressive, and as mentioned before, the key topic in order to engage in whatsoever endeavor or project or whatsoever is regulations. And regulations, unfortunately, in Lebanon are missing a lot. And you can notice from the waste management crisis that are occurring year after year. We're managing a crisis. We're not planning strategically how to manage the waste problem in Lebanon. So no strategic or no strategy for a waste management plan in Lebanon. It's just, we call it in Arabic, idarit azamat. So we're just managing the crises as they occur. And for your information, maybe tomorrow, Precisely, I was informed today that tomorrow the landfill of Burj Hamoud and Jdeidi will be closed, and maybe until, if no solution will be provided between today and tomorrow, the garbage will rise again in the streets, and we will maybe look out at a situation close to 2015. So how I was communicated this, and I will get into it after these slides. So in this chaos that we are living in, which is Lebanon, and with the lack of governance in so many places, or not abiding by some laws and regulation already existent, there are a lot of opportunities. A lot of opportunities that Arcenciel tracked and seized several years ago. I will just be talking about the part related to environment because Arcenciel is a big NGO. And whether it's in environment or in other topics, the approach related to Arcenciel, the strategy that we adopt is as following. First of all, we check and we track a need, whether it's in waste, whether it's in social, whether it's in agriculture or whatsoever. Once the need is detected, we do all the research to find what could be provided as a solution to fill this gap the need has created. Filling this gap will involve a kind of pilot project to be established, an experiment. Once this experiment has succeeded, then we can work later on ensuring its sustainability. How to ensure the sustainability? The sustainability is usually ensured by the development of a public policy, whether it's a decree, whether it's a law, whether it's a municipal decision, whether it's pushing or supporting an entrepreneur or a small SME to continue working within this field. So this is the basic approach as we consider it as strategic within Arcenciel. And in each approach we take, in each project or in each gap filling we work in, we manage to seek or to create a new market and have a different approach. So why I'm talking about creating a market and having a different approach? Because we don't want to end up in what I call the hot dog trailer approach. Why the hot dog trailer approach? Because as you have noticed during the years, there was several trailers of hot dogs opening on the highway of Beirut. One opened, then the second saw that this is a lucrative work, and you had on all the highway hot dogs trailers parking and selling the hot dogs at the point that some of them didn't work a lot, didn't sell a lot, and it ended up by closing all these trailers. So we tackle to create, or we work on creating a new market, have a different approach toward a product. We use the newest technology possible, and most importantly, we try to serve and involve people in need. When I talk about people in need, I'm not talking about people with disabilities only, physical or mobility disabilities, but also financial problems or another type of difficulties. And in order for all this to work out, we should take into consideration three aspects: the socio-cultural environment in which we are establishing the project, the economical background of it, will it generate profit, will it be a viable project or not, and of course, the environmental impact of such projects. We try in the implementation of our project in ensuring the sustainability to have the less negative impact on the environment. All these merged together will allow us to have a livable, viable, equitable, and sustainable project. And this is how we did it. But in addition to the basics that I have just mentioned, and because we live in a country called Lebanon, we have to take other aspects into consideration, mainly the political aspects, especially if we are implementing within a geographical area under a religious cover or political cover, then there are a lot of negotiations to be done in order to establish our project there. but it's not by approaching the political or the religious like the government or the politicians do, but just by creating a new market, a market that no one saw, a market that no one will see like a cash cow from it, then it won't be a problem for politicians and religious sector to allow the implementation of such projects. So political, religious stakeholders to take into consideration. Infrastructure, we lack a lot of infrastructure in Lebanon. We have also the problem of the population. A lot of regions and areas in Lebanon will just refuse to implement a project just because they are not fully aware of the benefit of such projects. And this is what we face a lot in implementing waste sorting facilities, for instance, and centers for the treatment of infectious waste. And also we have another problem, which is the lack of awareness, the lack of citizen awareness related to environmental topics. We don't have the culture of waste. We don't have a big culture of environment. And of course, we have a lack of funding related, mainly I'm talking about the municipalities, the Union of Municipalities, and the public sector as a whole. So all these taken into consideration allow us to work on a very precise and small business focused on infectious waste. Why we could work on this and didn't have a lot of competition on it, because the point of having a successful entrepreneurship is to focus on core business, precise, and very small. And the point also of having the entrepreneurship is to have to make the competition really irrelevant and to work at the lowest cost possible. This was possible when we established in 2003 the infectious healthcare waste treatment facilities. We are operating now since 2003, so around 17 years now, and using the utmost technology. In the picture here, you're seeing our new microwave machine that sterilizes the infected waste, whether the infected waste usually generated by hospitals or even the waste infected nowadays by COVID-19, by the coronavirus, are all treated within this type of machines, whether it's built on, whether it works on microwave or whether it works, or we use the technology of autoclave, which works on water, on steam at a very high pressure, reaching around 5 bars at 140 degrees, around 45 to 60 minutes to sterilize the waste after being shredded, and to end up with a final product sterilized, clean, and to be disposed as normal solid waste, and even cleaner. And the second picture down the machine, you can see that this is what remains of the treated waste, infectious medical waste. You see the volume is almost nothing. Usually in the autoclave, the volume is reduced to around 60%. And in the microwave technology, the volume of the waste is reduced to 80%. And you see how thin shredded they are. So in order to ensure the sustainability of such a project, so we started in this focused area, in this niche product, which was the infectious waste, medical waste. And it constitutes just 16% of the 20% of the waste generated from hospitals. So no one had thought about this problem, but we tracked this problem because these waste, before Arcenciel intervened, exception aside of some hospitals working on some autoclaves already on a very small scale, these waste were dumped sporadically, randomly in municipal bins next to residential areas. And we did a small analysis and study on an area around some hospitals, and we saw that the degree or the level of infection of the citizens with different kinds of viruses and bacteria was very high. Based on this study, we moved on and built up our pilot. Then now we are managing 3 centers all over Lebanon, Beirut, Saida, and Bekaa. And we are capable of treating 20 to 23 tons a day of infectious waste. But actually, nowadays we are treating because it's the only quantities we are receiving from hospitals, around 12 to 13 tons per day of infectious waste generated by healthcare facilities, not only hospitals, but also clinics, dispensaries, and laboratories. Another project we worked on, so before moving here, and I was telling you that ensuring the sustainability of this project was through the creation of a network involving the Ministry of Public Health and the Syndicate of Hospitals, which allowed us to issue a decree holding the number 13,389, which put or specified the norms and criteria on how to manipulate and treat such type of waste generated by healthcare facilities. The second project we worked on, and also we started from, we focused on a core business, precise and small. It started with the rolling cap project that enabled us to work on the awareness part on sorting at source, collecting caps, and adding an added value to it, which was providing a wheelchair to a person in need after selling a ton of bottle caps, water bottle caps. Then when the crisis of 2015 occurred, we went a level up and built this secondary sorting facility you are seeing in the picture on 690 square meters, capable of treating 16 tons per day of clean waste, recyclable clean waste. And as you can see at the beginning of the picture, we have a bag opener with a feeding conveyor going into a trommel. Then after the trommel, you have the normal conveyor where the sorting is done manually depending on the types of the waste. And at the end of the line, you have a magnetic overband to retract everything which is metal. And down on the floor, you have a bin which is collecting what is not, or the mistakes in the sorting that happened at the household level. So we are treating in terms of recyclable waste around 1,500 tons a year. We did around 24,000 collections during a year and served around 1,300 clients all over Lebanon. So this was a showcase for municipalities when the crisis occurred, to show them that a simple line for sorting, secondary sorting, was possible. And if it was scaled up at a union of municipalities or at a gathering of municipalities, things would be easier for them to manage their own waste on a decentralized level. This led us to the project we did in Berytech, which was the first secondary sorting facility during the 2015 crisis that was implemented and created for the waste management of the municipality of Berytech and the villages surrounding this municipality. The other component of our approach toward waste management, and after developing a guide related to municipal solid waste, we integrated the organic component in order to produce a compost, or at least a product that isn't any more harmful for the environment. So in partnership with USG, we developed this this composting drum, which is divided into 4 compartments. Each compartment moves independently from the other, speed-wise, oxygen-wise, humidity-wise, in order to end up with a good grade compost. And this project now is being optimized through a funding from the European Union in partnership with a municipality, an Italian municipality called Sestri Levante, and an Italian NGO named COSPE, as well as the municipality of Mahdia in Tunisia, and it's the Center of Research in Tunisia named CITED. So we are working on optimizing this, this composting drum, which was produced locally, and all the spare parts and maintenance are locally provided. And this machine, or this drum, can be adapted to the needs or the capacity of each municipality depending on the quantities generated of waste. which lead us to the Big Faya project that we've implemented with the municipality of Big Faya, and now also through the Any Climate project funded by European Union and the partners I have mentioned. We are adding a component related to the treatment of organic waste through the membrane composting in order to reduce the smell and accelerate the composting, the pre-fermentation phase before maturation. And you have this sorting facility, the secondary sorting facility, capable of treating up to 16 tons of recyclable, clean, pre-sorted waste. We also worked on several projects, among which a baseline assessment that was communicated to, that was developed also in partnership with the European Union, LDK, which is a consulting environmental agency, and the Union of Municipality of Zahrani, involving 18 municipalities, and of course the Ministry of Environment, where we managed to develop a baseline assessment specifying the categorization, the typology of the waste generated within this area. So as you can see, in this chaotic country, opportunities are huge, are humongous, especially with the bad management of the government or of the public authorities to most of the sectors. Waste is one of them, unfortunately. And the most important thing is to focus on a core business, very precise, very small, away from the competition, in order to help the people in which we will be implementing the project, try to protect as much as we can the environment around it, and also create jobs and generate some profit to sustain the activity and to sustain the project that we've implemented. I will stop here and we'll be waiting for your questions.
Thank you, Mario, for your intervention. It was very interesting. So we are running out of time. So we have like around 2 minutes for answering the questions. Let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so like we have, I'll combine these 4 questions. So basically, there are some clarifications after your some of your statements regarding the environment impact assessment and the strategic environmental assessment. So basically, they are saying that the EIA is publicly available with comments, and regarding the SEA, it has been made for the O&G sector, and it is also made nationally. And also, like regarding the oil and gas sectoral specific regularity, so the health, safety, and environment was tackled, and the regularity index for hazardous waste exists nationally. So
Okay.
I'll give you like one quick
just a second regarding
comment,
this. To be very, very brief. I mentioned these points before because we took part of the bidding in the treatment of the waste generated from the oil and gas activity in block number 4. And when we got the bids, there was just mentioned waste management with no specific types or criteria or norms on how to resolve or dispose of the waste generated from these platforms. And the thing is that there were a lot of local actors who were working without permits, who have pyrolysis or so to process oil and sludge, etc. They had their way of contact with public authorities or whatsoever to adjust their situation and accordingly get the required permits in order to take part of this sector. And actually, we have presented to this bid in partnership with Veolia, and we got refused because they were working more on giving more access to local actors and have the minimum exported, whereas Lebanon doesn't have the platforms, nor all the technologies to treat what would have been generated by the oil and gas activities.
Okay, and regarding the funding, I believe you have mentioned it after I think they asked the question, so I think it's covered.
Yeah, the funding is double. Yani it's either
Yeah.
from institution and international foundations or from the activities we are already leading in Arcenciel, which generate money and allow us to cover the operations.
Great. And does the MRF receive source separated recyclables? Do you have organic waste contamination? How is the waste collected?
Okay, here we should differentiate regarding the MRF two part. There is the dirty MRF and the clean RMF. When we talk about dirty MRF, is like the facilities managed by OMSAR right now in Lebanon. When we talk about clean MRF, is what we are doing as Arcenciel. We are receiving pre-sorted waste, mainly recyclables. And for the composting drum we have in Tanayil, we are focusing right now just on agricultural waste to have a better grade compost, because from a dirty MRF, you cannot produce a good quality compost.
And like, I'm sorry, we don't have enough time to cover all the questions. I'm gonna just tackle the, do you help startups? So I believe Berytech with Arcenciel and our ecosystem is ready and available to help the startups, of course, in this field.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mario, again for.
Sorry, yes,
yes,
just important.
sure.
Can you about the? There is a question related to the infectious waste related.
Yes.
Yeah. The sterilized waste, infected waste, after being treated, we will have sterilized waste that could be disposed as normal waste, as solid municipal waste, and can be landfilled normally as being done right now. And one second thing I omitted to mention, that also the Ministry of Environment helped in the development of the Decree 13,389. And through the departments of the ministry, we were able to get all the permits to our centers and abiding by all their rules and regulation. So for the hazardous, infectious hazardous part, it's covered. And even some regulations, new regulations were established for the management of cytotoxic and other hazardous waste.
Okay, thank you, Mario, again for joining us. Thank you, Ronald. And thank you to all the listeners. I hope you have enjoyed the session. We'll take just a couple of minutes before starting the second session, which is related to water and wastewater management. If you're signing out, please, it would be great if you can answer a small survey so that we keep on improving our webinars. Thank you. So we're back for the second session of our webinar today. For the people who have just joined us, I'm Elias Nicholas, the Cleantech specialist at Berytech, and I'm hosting today's webinar. The Cleantech Learning Series is organized by Berytech under the Clean Energy Program, funded by the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Lebanon. I'm gonna briefly introduce the Clean Energies Accelerator. So this accelerator aims at supporting ideas and startups working on solutions to the challenges existing in the clean tech sector. So the team will have to tackle challenges in transportation, energy, water, waste, or agriculture. Through this program, Berytech will offer the selected startups the resources, knowledge, support, and funding necessary to scale and grow. You can check additional info and eligibility criteria on Berytech's website, berytech.org, and you can go to program section and select Clean Energy. The deadline to apply for the first batch of the Clean Energy Accelerator is beginning of June. If you think you have an innovative solution in the clean tech sector, I urge you to check the website and submit your application. In our first session, we welcomed Ronald Richa, Mario Goraieb, who shared their knowledge in the field of waste management. And for this second session on water and wastewater management, we will be welcoming two guest speakers, Ghassan LeGrand and Pierre Elzouki. We will start first with our expert in water and wastewater management, Ghassan LeGrand. Ghassan is the Managing Director of Veolia Water Technologies, oil and gas business unit for the Middle East region, with more than 20 years of experience in business development and P&L management in the oil and gas industry. He has worked for 14 years for engineering, construction, and operation of upstream, downstream oil and gas facilities, both onshore and offshore. And in 2014, he joined Veolia Group to develop the water projects in the oil and gas market, combining his expertise in the petroleum industry as well as his passion to the environment, since he deeply believes that water is too precious to use it only once. So Ghassan, thank you for joining and answering our invitation. Ghassan, can you hear me? Yes, Ghassan.
Hello. Yes, I'm back.
I think we lost you for a while.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
No worries. So thank you for answering our invitation. We're glad to have you with us in the Cleantech Learning Series. I will leave you to lead on your presentations. Sorry for the time delays from the previous session. So we'll try to get back on track. I'll leave you to share.
Thanks, Elias. I have what, 25 minutes in this case?
Yeah, let's make it 20.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I will. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh. So I'm trying to share it now.
Yes, we can see it now.
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Elias, again, and thanks for inviting me. I don't know if all the persons were in the first session for waste, but I will be talking mainly about water, which is a waste as well in the oil and gas. So as you said, I spent 20 years, more than 20 years in the oil and gas business, 14 years mainly working for operating companies. And for the last 6 years, I've been working for Veolia. So very funny to move from oil and gas companies business, where the reputation is mainly to pollute, and move to an environmental company like Veolia. But this was one of my motivation to move to a company like Veolia, which is at the same time is a leader in its business. As you see from the figures, and Ronald explained earlier, we do around $30 billion per year revenues, mainly split in 3 lines of businesses. The water is the biggest one. Around 45% of the business is coming from water, and then the rest is from energy and waste in general. So it's important when you work for oil and gas companies to have a purpose, and that's this is the main thing I try to share with my teams. Because we are not there in this business to teach and to tell the operating companies like the big five, Shell, ExxonMobil, Total, how to run their business or how to optimize their process. But being the leader in the environmental business, we are there to help them to preserve the planet resources by reducing their environmental impact, and that's very important. So I have a video to run. If you have any issues, yes, let me know. And I share the address on the bottom of the slide in case of people would like to watch it in parallel.
Improving access to resources while preserving and replenishing those resources is what we do at Veolia. Improving access to resources while preserving and replenishing those resources is what we do at Veolia. Each day at oil and gas production sites or refining plants, we treat and reuse water, we supply utilities, provide industrial services, reclaim byproducts, and treat hazardous wastes. By doing so, we contribute to optimizing the operating costs, increasing efficiency, and reducing the environmental footprint of the oil and gas industry. Here's how and why at a glance. Upstream, the extracted oil and gas can contain an important volume of produced water. This water is separated from the hydrocarbons, treated and in most cases re-injected into the reservoir to increase oil and gas recovery. Downstream, the refineries that turn crude oil into fuels, lubricants and other petroleum products use large amounts of water and steam. They also generate a lot of wastewater, for example, oily water, sour water or blowdown water. Depending on its quality, wastewater is separated and treated at an on-site wastewater treatment plant. The treated water is then recycled in various ways, the objective being to reach lean water usages up to a possible zero liquid discharge. It can be used as wash water, for example, to remove salt and sediments from crude oil. It can also be used in boilers. Here it is heated to generate steam that is then conveyed through heat exchangers or pipes for various purposes in the refinery. This water also feeds the cooling towers that regulate the temperature in these units. Lastly, it can also be used to clean tanks, heat exchangers or other industrial facilities. For safety reasons, these complex operations can be fully or partly automated. The oily residues and other hazardous wastes from refining operations are transferred to special waste treatment facilities where they are processed and safely disposed of. Useful byproducts can also be reclaimed from these wastes: solvents, sulfuric acid and other chemicals. This circular management of resources allows for reliable operation of oil and gas facilities and increases performance while meeting environmental standards.
Okay, so this video summarizes a little bit where do we find water in the oil and gas, and to continue in this presentation, it's important to set up a few keywords like the upstream. You hear a lot about upstream and downstream. So upstream, it's either it is for oil or gas. It's what is related to the production of oil or any liquids, okay, under the ground, so in the reservoir. And the downstream, to make it simple, it is all the rest, so what is related mainly to refining and petrochemicals. So we will talk a lot about upstream and downstream in the presentation. So since we are talking about oil and gas, it's important to know where is the market for this. So as you know, a lot of the reserves in the world for oil are mainly in the Middle East and North America, as well as South America. The consumption is mainly also in North America and in Europe. The production today, we are talking about 90 to 100 million barrels per day, and 6.6 barrels is around one cubic meter. For the gas, it's roughly the same. We see the reserves at the same place. So Middle East, a lot of reserves. We add to this Russia, okay, where they have also important reserves. I think 20% of the reserves of the world. And it's important to set up this to see where the production is, where the consumption is, because also it's related to the transport of these resources. As you can see in this slide, the oil price is related to the capex, what we call capex, the capital expenditure. When you see the curve, the red one, this is the price of oil. When the prices are high, these are the prices we saw in 2012 to 14. The capex, the capital expenditure, the investment in this business was huge. We're reaching around $700 billion of investment in the oil and gas when the oil prices were high. And unfortunately, when the prices go down, it's good for the consumer, but it affects directly the capex. And this is closely linked to the water, because if the oil price is high, then companies will invest more in water treatment, okay, because the cost of treating a barrel of water will be low compared to the oil price. And this is very important because we talked in the first session with Ronald about regulations. If regulations are tough and if the oil price is high, then many companies will be interested in treating the water to reuse it. And we find a direct correlation, a direct link between the oil price and the water treatment projects for reuse. So these investments are important. First, because the consumption is increasing. Okay, of course, we should not look to what's happening now, because this means if we build everything on what's happening now, this industry will die and will never exist anymore. But today, this is an industry for long term, so investments are huge. I don't know any industries where you have investments of hundreds of billions of dollars every year. So first, again, as I said, is because the consumption is increasing, so we still need to produce more oil and gas, but at the same time, because the reservoirs, most of them, or many of them are still producing since 60, 70, 80 years, are becoming mature and aging. So of course, to maintain the production of the same reservoirs, without talking about the new discoveries, is important. So we still need to invest hundreds of billions only to maintain the production as it is. And depending on the scenarios of the sustainable development, we still need at least 40 million barrels per day to be replaced within the coming 20 years. Ronald mentioned this very quickly. The WOR in our business, we talk a lot about water to oil ratio. As you know, the world is producing 100 million barrels of oil or equivalent oil per day, but I don't know how many know that the oil production to the water is the ratio is between 3 and 5. That means we have today between 400 and 500 million barrels of water produced from these wells. It's huge. So as you can see today in 2020, we are producing around 400 to 500 million barrel, and we predict that this with the aging fields, this ratio will go up to perhaps 10 in the coming 10, 15, 20 years. That means we will be producing, if we continue at 100 million barrel of equivalent oil today, to 10 times this in water. So it's a huge resource. And as we mentioned before, some of the companies, the oil companies, are asking themselves if they are water producers now or oil producers. And this is very important for their production, because without water, there is no oil. And when you see the water scarcity worldwide, where the water for the moment is mainly taken from rivers, from lakes, from wells, to inject in the reservoirs to increase the oil production, whilst we can take this water from the water present in the reservoir and what we call produced water. So to go back to upstream, today we can, of course, produce. It's split to onshore and offshore. And in Lebanon, we talked a lot about what will be happening in Lebanon. Main production in Lebanon will be today offshore. And I heard a lot about regulations, the risk and the reputation in Lebanon, because the pollution in Lebanon was not always very well managed. At the same time, I'm very positive because we are in the Mediterranean Sea, and if you don't know, the Mediterranean Sea, like many oceans, many seas, you have certain regulations. So we cannot do in Lebanon whatever we want. That's one thing to keep in mind. And the second point, which is very important, is that the oil production companies like Total, who are exploring today, and perhaps others who will join in the coming years, they cannot accept to link their name to any leak or any pollution in the Mediterranean. So these 2 points make me positive about this industry, of course, if we find oil or gas in Lebanon. So where do we find water? So it's a very simplified reservoir. Okay, if any reservoir engineers are looking, they will be laughing, but it is roughly because we don't see the levels like this. Okay, all of this is mixed, and the reservoir is like a rock. As we all learned in school, water is heavier than oil. So normally we find the first level, which is water, followed on the top by oil, and of course the gas, which is on the top. So it's like a straw when we start producing. That's the second level after what's happening now in Lebanon after exploration. So we'll start producing the oil. But as I said, it's never like this. So of course, this oil will come out mixed with water, mixed with gas. And when the reservoir is aging, okay, so this level will increase. It will go up, okay, and the oil level will shrink. And of course, to make the level of oil come up easier and keep the pressure on the reservoir, normally we have other platforms injecting water. Okay, so this water, it can come either from the sea, okay, when we are offshore, and that's the easiest place. Okay, you have a lot of seawater, or you can treat the water which is coming out from the reservoir to inject it, because of course you cannot inject the same quality of water. So very quickly, not to go into details, when you produce oil from the wells, you start by washing the oil with water. The easiest thing to take out, for example, salinity, salt from water, from oil, is to wash it with water. So it goes into different steps of treatment, separation, and in each step, you are separating oil from sediments, from water, from gas, and you collect all of this water. Of course, this water, you need to treat it. Ronald talked about waste, because you have sludge coming out and different waste as well. Us in the oil and gas, we have technologies today. We have the possibility to treat this kind of water. Okay, and by the way, any kind of water can be treated. It's all about the cost you want to put in the barrel or cubic meter of water. For the gas, it's roughly the same. It's what you need to keep in mind that in gas, if level of water or the quantities of water coming out are much less than the oil reservoir. So this is good again for Lebanon. So in gas, we don't produce a lot of water, much less. So the size of the installations are less, much smaller than what we find in the oil. But of course, we have other issues that petroleum engineers, reservoir engineers know about, like the inhibitors, the hydrate inhibitors, KHIs they inject, which are also chemicals that can create some pollution. But today, again, if we find these inhibitors or chemicals in water, we can treat them and separate them. So when water or the liquids in general, hydrocarbons and water comes out from the reservoir, so of course we find water, but this water is mixed to hydrocarbons, to solids, because you have also sediments, you have sands, you have dissolved solids like the salt, you have gases, you have all the chemicals you injected in the reservoir. So all of this comes out, and all of this needs to be treated. Now, this water, okay, so this is the water coming out, what we call produced water. So this can be treated to be back to the reservoir. That's the easiest use for the water. We need to inject, so either this water is injected, or you need to take water like the seawater to inject it. It has also its own pluses and minuses. The minuses is it's water which has a certain level of salinity, so it's important to treat it and take sulfate from it. If not, it will clog and plug the reservoir. We don't have shale gas for the moment in Lebanon, but you heard about this in the US. Shale gas also use a lot of water. And then we mentioned this as well, so we can use the water to create steam, because some of the oil in some places, like in Canada, in Venezuela, the oil is very heavy, and you need to inject steam to make it more liquid, if I may say. You have, so depending on the water the quality of water, you have different types of treatments. So the first one, we call it primary treatment, secondary treatment, or tertiary treatment. And very quickly, it's related to the pollution or contaminants we find in water. So if you need to push the quality of water, you need to treat with low levels of oil, of TSS. Then you need to add different steps of treatments. So I will not go into details today. So these are some injection skids we do in Veolia. So these are skids going offshore on the offshore platforms. These are very important, very big skids because we treat hundreds of thousands of barrels of water, of seawater. In the gas, so this in the gas also we have certain technologies, because the contamination we find in the water coming from gas fields is different. Because, so very quickly, because it is gas, some of the pollutants between the gas or between the gas level and the water level goes very quickly, very easily between the gas and the water. So we find them in the water, which is not the case when between oil and the water. So some of these contaminants we find in the water from gas fields need special treatments. And today we have in Veolia, it's I think the best technology available in the market. It's the only technology which can take out the benzene, the toluene, the xylene, which are very difficult pollutants that we find in water. And normally we find this in what we call the floating LNG. And I'm mentioning this because this is something that can come in Lebanon. If we find gas, perhaps we will be producing the gas, of course, offshore, but we don't need to send it onshore to be treated or to be liquefied. As you know, it's much easier to transport gas when it is liquid. And by liquefying it at minus 164 degrees, I think, you reduce substantially the volume. So perhaps the solution in Lebanon could be to have floating energy plants, like the picture you can see, where the gas is produced, liquefied offshore, and ships can come take it from the floating LNG platform and take it to, transport it abroad to be gasified again. So these are some of the projects we did. For the downstream, very quickly, so that was the upstream. So we produced the oil, we produced the gas, we treated the water. Then the oil or the gas, mainly the oil, will go to refineries. So today the refining market is huge worldwide, with more than 600 refineries. So I will go quickly. And when the oil arrives to a refinery, it's raw, and it needs again to be treated. Again, the water is used a lot in the refineries. And at the same time, the process in the refinery is generating as well water. That's what we call very quickly the wastewater. So all these waters are collected in the wastewater treatment plant, and that's where our role comes again, where we need to take all the contaminants again from oil, from particles, through different steps, primary, secondary, tertiary. We go for a zero liquid discharge today in some places in the world. In Qatar, for example, we built a few years back the biggest zero liquid discharge. So no more liquids coming out. Either we treat, everything is treated, and if we have some waste coming out, it's not liquid, it's not injected anymore or sent to the sea or to the ocean. It's solid. Of course, this costs a lot of money. So main things to take today: without the water, there's no oil production. Okay, and that's a very important point. And the oil companies are changing their look for the water. It's not anymore a problem. Okay, it's a resource to be able to increase their oil production. The maturity of reservoirs is a huge problem. Okay, we are facing today, but we will be facing more and more in the coming years. I didn't talk about salinity, or I mentioned this very quickly. The problem with these mature reservoirs is with the age. Okay, quantity of water is increasing, but the salinity is huge. As you know, the salinity of seawater is between 40-45 grams. Here we have sometimes water coming out at 150, 200, 250 grams per liter of salinity. So you can imagine the color and how this water looks. And today a lot of money is spent by research and development to find the economical solutions to treat this water. And the high oil price, unfortunately, it's not good for consumers again. But when you have high oil price, in general, it helps in investing money to treat wastewater and find different solutions to be reused. So that's it for today. I hope, Elias, I was not too long.
Thank you, Ghassan. It was a very interesting presentation. And it's actually a very interesting topic because usually when we talk about or when we mention like clean technologies, we usually directly think about like renewable sources of energies like wastewaters and waste management. But really, like most of the time, we miss that we can even make the oil and gas industry even more cleaner, and like there are lots of room of managing the waste and the water waste coming out of this industry. So it was really a very interesting topic. We have here one question so far. I would like to ask the attendees that if they have any more questions to ask to Ghassan during this session, like please go to Slido and submit your question. So this question was asked earlier for Ronald, but we missed it. So I would like to re-ask the same question about the drilling fluids. The common practice, is it considered as waste or product that can be used in other ways?
Drilling fluids, for us, it was not the main topic here, but for me, coming from the oil and gas, but Ronald is here. For me, it's a waste.
Actually, the practices in the oil. I'm sorry. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead. We can hear you, Ronald. You can go.
Yeah, okay. So the drilling fluids, actually the practices in the oil and gas is that the drilling fluid are reused, are treated, are sieved, and then reused and re-injected. Now, when we talk about drilling fluids, they are used, as I presented, to bring to the surface all the debris, all the rocks, and so on that are generated by crushing the rock. So when you are sieving these fluids, you will have all these rocks that will be contaminated, and this is mainly the waste stream that is generated. This is what we call the drill cuttings in the oil and gas sector. So these drilling fluids, we take them, we sieve them, we separate the sand and all these rocks, we re-inject them, and then we reuse them. But there are these crushed rocks and sands that are heavily contaminated that needs to be treated, and this is what we call drilling cuttings, and this is what we call the waste stream.
Thank you, Ronald and Ghassan, for your intervention today. It was really a pleasure having you with us. For our next session, I would like to welcome Pierre Elzouki. So Pierre, he's a serial entrepreneur from a family of entrepreneurs with technical and industrial background. He started doing business at the age of 13 and started his computer programming skills back in 1985. He holds the positions of CEO, chairman, and member of the board in several companies. He's the chairman at Aquatersus Water Regeneration Systems, which is a Swedish company providing lasting on-site products and solutions for biological treatment and wastewater and polluted water. Pierre is also a board member in the Swedish Lebanese Chamber of Commerce since 2016, and he was elected president of its board in 2020. Thank you, Pierre, for joining us today. Without further delays, I'll leave you to lead on your presentation. So please feel free to share your screen for the presentation. I'm not hearing you, Pierre, so can you hear me?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, let me see how I can share my screen.
On the bottom of the screen, there's a green button, share screen.
Share screen, yes. So let's do that. Let me see here. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can now.
All right, great. So it's a great opportunity to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I can introduce myself. I'm Lebanese, Swedish Lebanese. I've been here in Sweden for 40 years, and it has been always exciting to wait for all the development in Lebanon. And I'm happy that we have Berytech and Agritech and all these events that are happening today. Long waiting for, and it's very, very exciting. So let me see here. let me start here. So, okay. So I will be today introducing Aquatersus and my journey with Aquatersus, what we've done and why we've done it. So I will not go into technical issues and how we do it. I have several doctors working with the company, so they can answer all these kind of questions. But basically what we do is we look at water, treating wastewater, but we look at the steps behind that, which is beyond that, which is treating the water, reusing the water and the energy and all the nutrients in the water. Let me see here if I can go. So, I live in Sweden, as I said, is the red dot up there. My background as an entrepreneur, I have a technical background from the Institute of Technology, Telecom. And about year 2000, we had the hype about internet and dot-com era. All my friends wanted to work for big corporations. Well, I thought I want to do my own thing. So I started a company called Scalado together with a friend, and we looked for the next thing, not internet, but mobile internet. And we assumed that, or we boldly said that internet will come into your mobile phone, which at the time had monochrome screen, will have internet. You will be able to see TV and radio in your mobile phone, which at the time was extremely crazy. Nobody believed in us, but some did. So what we did at that time is we created technologies and packaged it as software developing kits, which means tools. And we provided these tools for telephone manufacturers and said to them, with these technologies and these tools, you can handle images. So basically you can zoom into the image, create panoramas, 3D effects, make all kinds of things. So if you had a Sony Ericsson, Nokia, Motorola, HTC, Samsung, or whatever between 2003 and 2012, 14, chances are big you used some of our technology, because we embedded this in over 2 billion mobile phones. In 2012, Nokia acquired this company, and then Microsoft acquired that division. So that technology lives today in the environment of Microsoft. And I made my exit together with the other shareholders. And then I started investing in different companies. So this is my journey as entrepreneur, but also nowadays as also small investors. One of the investments I made is within Aquatersus, which is water purification and reuse and management. So what is our driving forces? What do we see and why do we do this? Well, the world does not need a new Wi-Fi router. The top of mind right now is that for us and for the future generations is clean air, clear food, and clean water. The challenges that we are facing, all of us, are threatening humanity and the whole planet. We are trying to, in this company, to develop sustainable and affordable technology that can be used for everyone, rich and poor. The technologies that we are aiming and the solution we're looking for, they will mimic nature, because nature has for hundreds of millions of years been treating all the rest products, which is the biological waste, and there is no rest, no residues. When we human beings are trying to do our chemical substances and have good solutions, we have waste and we have to dump them somewhere, and that creates leakage and other types of problems. So in our companies, we are trying to just listen to nature and try to copy it, what we call biomimicry. Here are some pictures of our solution. We try to copy a river basically and put it in these couple barrels, where we copy the environments and make assure that some of the ecosystems that lives and prosper in nature can prosper in our barrels. And through that, we can have extremely well water purification. So this has been developed for about 30 years, and we have now developed this into version 5 and version 6 and version 7. That's where we are. What we can see is the barrels are dig down in earth, and when you're finished, you don't see anything. You just see the place where you have your plants. And when these plants are there and they have got this water, the sewage water, which is rich in with nutrients, the plants just grow like crazy. So in 3 months, you don't see where the system is. It's just beyond the underground and cannot see it. So it's in total harmony and living in the ecosystem as part of the ecosystem, and that's part of the success. So how do you look at water? Well, it is crazy in Sweden, but also in most places in the whole world. The tap water is the drinking water, and we use that to drink, but we also use it for showering and for flushing the toilet. So why should we use the drinkable water to flush your toilet? And some people who can afford it can have the clean water, and the other people who cannot afford, they will use other quality water also for drinking and all of that. So our aim here is to make sure that the water will last more for more people. So you don't use that for flushing and showering and all of that. So how do we do that? This is a very simplified picture of our purification process. The first process to the left, the first champagne glass, holds the biomass or the untreated wastewater. We call it the black gold because it has all the nutrients, all the vitamins and everything, all the good stuff that you ate last night comes into there. So how can we treat it? How can the microorganisms eat that and break it down? So you jump into this step number 2, where the lodge is broken. And for that, we have chambers and environments where anaerobic microorganisms do their job. We call it climatization and good environments. The step 3 is our final product at this stage, which is purified water. We use the aerobic microorganisms and plants to achieve this. And what we got in the end is crystal clear revived water, as we call it. It's almost smell-free, almost taste-free, and of course, the best thing is that it's sludge-free. There's no rest products in this. The water itself can be used for many things. You can use it for irrigation. Now you can water your lawn. You can do cultivation or whatever. So that can be used for any place in the world, including Sahara or any desert place where the water scarcity is huge. So if you have people, you will have sewage. If you have sewage, you have water, and then you can reuse the water. That's basically putting it very simple. So we want to achieve a level of 90% of saved and reused water. We save also energy that converts into terms of kilowatt hours or carbon dioxide emissions. We will lower that very much. There are many reasons for that. We save the nutrients by fixing them or extracting them. Fixing them in let's say, vegetation, plants. Extracting them is where we can sell them for other purposes. This will create business models, looking at new jobs, subscriptions, and all kinds of things. The system is modular. It's fully scalable from one household to many households. Or a small town, but it is scalable, so it can handle much more people. The best thing with it is it's biological and fully sustainable in these terms. So how can we use it? Let's look at different contexts when we talk about circular economy and sustainable economy. Here is an example. You have a house where you have, let's say, 100 people. The average of water consumption in Sweden is about 200, 215, 220 liters per day, but the average in Europe is 180. So if you have 100 people times 180, you will have 180,000 liters per day or like 6,500 cubic meters per year. If the water cost about $2 per cubic meter, that is purchasing the water, transporting the water, and when you are flushing the water, it goes back to municipality, whatever. If you say that the cost for that is $2 per cubic meters, purifying this water and recirculating 90% of the water, as we say here, will actually save 6,000 cubic meters per year for these 100 people, or $12,000. When you put that on a scale for a town, that's a lot of money, that's a lot of saving. Now remember this, you can take your shower once, twice, 5 times a day. We don't prohibit it because you are just showering with reused water. So there is no waste of water. You can shower 20 times a day. We're not prohibiting or changing any behavior, habits. Okay, next thing, how can we use the water in other places? So as a business developer, we're looking for to see how can we collaborate with partners. It's all about partnerships. So here is an example. We're making test beds. Of course, this system has been embedded in several places, but then we look at the next phase, which is the digital bioeconomy, as we call it. And that's a project we're doing with the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, where we take this sewage water and purify it to such level that it has its nutrition, and then we let grow or cultivate with it. So you can use hydroponic cultivations, aeroponic cultivations, and aquaponic. Aquaponic is where you have your fish and involved, but the aeroponic is something new. There is a new innovation here in Sweden. And the good thing with aeroponic cultivation, a technology that can be used indoors in your basement, or actually in a box in your home, in urban environments, is that you use minimal amount of water, but you cultivate it, you have climatization, the temperature, the light, and all of that is perfectly orchestrated, as to say, to get the perfect growth of your salads, tomatoes, whatever you want to have. We live in southern Sweden in an area called Ideon. I want to introduce Ideon for you. There is about 10 to 12,000 employees here. All kind of technology have been brought from here. And there is another interesting potential partner for you, Cleantech Scandinavia, and also the United Nations Office for Projects and Services. They have 2 offices in the world. One of them is here in Lund, and they are looking to support all kind of great ideas. They actually announce projects and challenges, and you can apply for that. So I just want to mention it. So Ideon, the research park, compared to the Lebanon Berytech, here is a bit older. It started in '83, but in Sweden, in this small country, Sweden, and also in this small town in Sweden, which is about 80,000 inhabitants, that is including 40,000 students from all the universities, there is a lot of innovation. At least in my research park here, 3,400 patents have been patented. And the things that came from this research park is Bluetooth, Nicorette, the inkjet printer, and so on. Here is the Cleantech Scandinavia, where they're also open for collaboration with Lebanon, and we can invite you and collaborate, open our database with over 2,000 innovative companies here in the Nordic and the Balticum. There are investors that might be interested for you. So this is just an opening for us. Okay, so the takeaways. We have tried to copy nature, and we have proven that biomimicry works. The system can go from one household and be very scalable. Your wastewater is a very, very important resource, and you can use it at least for irrigation, as we said, hydroponic, aquaponic, or aeroponic. There are some partners, and we have learned a lot from working with with partners and all these kind of collaborations. I will stop there, just mentioning that this is my contact information, and also the Chamber of Commerce between Lebanon and Sweden is very open to see if there is anything that we can match make or whatever between the countries. So happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre, for your presentation. And now the floor is open for the audience to ask any question to Pierre. Please go to the Slido link and post whatever question you'd like to ask to Pierre.
Thank you. You asked me to keep it below 15, so I did it in well, that's fast. That's good.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Like, I'm trying to keep to stay on track with the time.
Of course.
Yeah, if I may ask, like, regarding the different markets that you have worked with, like with Aquatersus. So, are you just working with the clients in Sweden, or you have like some global presence here as well?
No, we have. I've been visiting potential clients in both in Africa, in Arabic Peninsula, in Saudi Arabia, and other places with potential projects. But we have embedded this technology or these products. They are installed for several years in Poland, in Sweden, and I think we have in France also. We talked to some projects about some projects in Bolivia and other places. The thing is that when it comes to water and accessibility to water is kind of crazy. Even in Sweden, the climate change have done so. Even, you know, all lawns in Sweden are green, but not like 2 years ago, everything was yellow because of the shortage of water. So even if you have a lot of water, you don't have it in your own lawn. So how can you, but you know, the municipalities and everybody and the government said, stop watering your lawn because we have shortage in water. Why? Because the water that comes in is the same that you water your lawn and the one that you cook your food and, you know, the drinking water, because they don't have separate systems. And one of the things that we have seen is that if you, and that's some of the difficulties what we have seen, it's difficult to repipe all the existing housing in Europe, let's say. So what we are addressing is the new type of eco houses, and so where we can from the beginning design the houses, or we do it with cottages or houses, you know, in rural areas where they are not already connected to the grid. Because they have septic tanks, and the septic tanks, to make it simple here, the septic tanks are very passive. They don't clean the water. Our systems clean the water, and you can actually just open the water and let it run out in your, I don't know, outside your house, and it will be 100% accepted by the municipalities, which is we have very, very hard regulations here in Sweden and most European countries. Now, the opportunity is that in Lebanon, it will be much easier to use our systems. And I tell you why. In Lebanon, we have 3 sources of drinking or of water. We have the pipes that come in your kitchen where you drink water. I would never use it. And then you have another tap where you have the tank water from the roof, you know, and then you have your bottled water. When I'm in Lebanon, I only use the bottled water, of course. But in Lebanon, it's easy to connect this system to your tank, the cleaned water in your tank to take your shower or flush your toilet or whatever you have. So it's much easier to implement this in Greece, in Lebanon, in some other countries than in Europe, where they have one system. In Lebanon, we have at least the dual systems. So there are some benefits with having dual systems, like in Lebanon. So that's one thing I want to mention.
Like it's very interesting to see that that there are lots of challenges which are common globally, and like lots of opportunities to do like to do some innovations in this sector, which can even scale beyond like Lebanon and go like even for global use.
Yes.
With that, I would like to thank you, Pierre, for joining us today, and hopefully we'll stay in touch for future projects. At the end of this session, I would like to thank again also Ghassan, and thanks to all to our listeners, and we hope that you have enjoyed this session. We will take just a couple of minutes before starting the third session, which is related to energy. If you're signing out, please, it would be great if you can answer a small survey so that we can on improving our webinars. We'll be back in a few seconds.
Thank you.
So we're back for our third session of our webinar today. For the people who have just joined us, I'm Ilyas Nicholas, the Cleantech specialist at Berytech, and I'm hosting the webinar today. The Cleantech Learning Series are organized by Berytech under the Cleanergy program, funded by the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands in Lebanon. Allow me to briefly introduce you to the Cleanergy Accelerator. So the accelerator aims at supporting ideas and startups working on solutions to the challenges that exist in the clean tech sector. So the team will have to tackle challenges in transportation, energy, water, waste, or agriculture. Through this program, Berytech is offering the selected startups the resources, the knowledge, support, and funding which are necessary to scale and grow. You can check additional info and eligibility criteria on Berytech's website, berytech.org. You can go to Programs section and select Cleanergy. The deadline to apply for the first batch of the Cleanergy Accelerator is beginning of June. If you think that you have an innovative solution in the clean tech sector, I urge you to check the website and submit your application. So in the first session, we welcomed Ronald Richa and Mario Goraieb, who shared their knowledge in the field of waste management. And then in the second session, we focused on the water and wastewater management with Ghassan LeGrand and Pierre Elzouki. Now, in our last session of the webinar, we're focusing on the energy, and I would like to welcome our two guest speakers, Salah Tabbara and Menna Sabry. We'll start first with our expert in energy, Salah Tabbara. Salah is the co-founder of the Naseem Akkar Wind Farms project and general manager of Infratech. Naseem Akkar is the first wind energy project in Lebanon, and it will include up to 43 wind turbines generating a combined total of up to 227 megawatts of power. Salah is the group CEO of Limad Holding, a privately owned business group with interest in construction, energy, and environment. Salah, thank you for answering our invitation. We're glad to have you with us in this Clean Tech Learning Series. I will leave you to lead on your presentation.
Thank you, Ilyas.
We're able to see the screen, so please you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Lias. Thank you for having me. And I would like to welcome Menna as well, who's, I guess, all the way in Egypt, who will be joining us for that talk. And I would like to welcome our viewers for the short, but hopefully important presentation that will give light to my journey in Lebanon and talk a bit about wind. I mean, that's the purpose of our talk today. I hope that everyone is safe back home with COVID-19 and wishing our friends Ramadan Mubarak. Okay, so let's start. The topic that I chose for our talk today is rising above challenges. And I would like to take you through that journey and to tell you how it all started, how this dream started in 2010. So that's 10 years ago. We haven't arrived to the finishing line, but a lot of progress have been made. Bear with me if I go back in memory lane, but I think it's something worth listening to. So a bit like all Lebanese, I came back in 2002. The Lebanese who were living outside of Lebanon, and if you recall, in 2002, Lebanon was quite different than it is today. It was a bustling time, cafes were full, Beirut was filled with tourists. And I had that dream that coming back to my country and assisting this country in rebuilding itself is part of my purpose. It was not until 2005 that I decided to go in the environment field. And initially, what I started doing with a group of friends, we set up a company called SCS, and our focus was to do carbon trading. In retrospect, that was the best thing we have decided to do. And we were proud that we were the first in the region to offer the services under the Kyoto Agreement to tackle climate change. We obviously, because it's a very big and wide industry, carbon trading, we got to know the environment as a header through its main title and the subsector below that. Obviously, as most of you would recall, in 2008, 2009, there was the big global financial crisis and all over the world. And one of the industries that saw a sad ending was the carbon market. But that being said, because we were involved in that industry, we took a closer look at the electricity sector in Lebanon. And when we say electricity sector, we always have to divide it into three parts. You have the generation part, the transmission part, and finally the distribution part. I was sitting in Beirut. I got a call from an Egyptian friend who told me that he wanted to visit the Prime Minister because he just bought a company in Spain that manufactures wind turbine. And for me, wind was like any other industry in renewables. It was quite new for us in Lebanon, but obviously you had success stories a bit all over the world. And like the previous speaker, big subsidies were supporting these industries, whether it's in Europe or in the US. So the guy calls me, we set up a meeting with the Prime Minister. He tells him, we want to build the first wind farm in Lebanon. That was 2010, when the Lebanese government committed that 12% of its generation capacity by 2020 will come solely from renewables. So it was like, again, a eureka moment for us. So it was back then when the seed was planted for us to go and tap into that opportunity. But for our viewers, I mean, we all know everyone has a small idea of, or a big idea about Lebanon troubled electricity sector. I mean, it's really sad that post the civil war and until today, we haven't been able to find a sustainable solution to a nazif or a bleeding that has costed the Lebanese a lot. And we'll go over these 3 quick graphs so for us to be on the same page. On the generation level, us as Lebanese or EDL or the Lebanese government, whatever you want to call it, we are producing around 2,000 megawatts currently as we speak. That was actually in 2018. These figures are from 2018. But in 2010, sadly, not much has changed since then. While the peak demand is 3,500, around 3,500 megawatt. And obviously that delta was catered by the private generators. And people who are living in Lebanon, they know exactly the pain that they go through because they have to pay 2 direct bills without talking about the opportunity cost. We'll get that maybe at a later stage. But obviously, when we look at that, you have around $5.3 billion that are getting out, and this is in hard currency, that are getting out of Lebanon to the private generators who are buying the fuel, and obviously to EDL, whose fuel is being subsidized by the Lebanese government. So this is today the main issue on the generation level. Since the 90s, the Lebanese government has been subsidizing fuel, obviously because nothing has been done in terms of tariff change. So since the 90s, there is a fixed price of around 9.5 cents the kilowatt, while the cost for EDL was in the 20s. So there was a delta of around 10 cents that was being subsidized by the Lebanese government. And this is why since the end of the civil war, the early 90s, the Lebanese government has been losing anywhere between $1 to $2 billion, depending on the price of the heavy fuel oil or diesel. I have on the bottom left a very interesting graph, quite easy. On the revenue side, the Lebanese government was collecting around 900 to 950 million. This is 2018 figures, around $950 million. While the cost on itself, without the OPEX, without staff expenses, without other EDL costs and CAPEX, was around $1.6 million. In this specific case, in 2018, we had a deficit of around $2 billion. What's important to note, and this is also very relevant to our discussion, is that let's take 2018 as a case study, where we had a total produced electricity of around 2,400 megawatt. Of these 2,400 megawatt, we have technical losses. And when we say technical losses, it's old machinery, it's an outdated equipments, what have you. Because of these losses, we had the equivalent of 400 megawatt in direct losses. And that's just crazy in the grand scheme of things. So in net, the Lebanese government or EDL had around 2,000 megawatt to go through their distribution network, in which we have non-technical losses, which means people not paying, or worse, people who are stealing this electricity without actually paying to that. What added, obviously, to our problems in that specific sector is that with Lebanon getting impacted directly by the Syrian civil war, there was an additional 400 megawatt plus or minus of demand, and sadly, a lot of this electricity was not collected, or we didn't have the revenues from these 400 megawatt because of that. So this is grosso modo what we faced, and this is the situation of the electricity sector, sadly, in Lebanon. To just put things into perspective, so since the 90s till today, Lebanon has, the Lebanese government has supported EDL, including interest, around $40 billion. That's around 40% of our total public debt. And in the context of what's happening today, this is plain sad for all Lebanese that this is a major cause for the current social unrest that we are facing as we speak today. And in one of the reports of the World Bank, their statement is very clear. I have it on the bottom of our presentation. It's the second biggest obstacle to private sector growth after our political instability. Okay, so in one graph, we have 4 segments that are very important for us to understand the whole picture. Low average tariff, it's obviously not sufficient to cover our cost. We have revenue losses of 40%. This is due to the losses from the transmission, from our outdated transmission network. This is what we call transmission or technical losses. And then non-technical losses is due to theft, as we said, and uncollected bills. Again, old and inefficient assets. Most of EDL existing facilities are outdated, and no capex had been properly invested in that sector. Obviously, if you look at the price of natural gas vis-a-vis the price of heavy fuel oil and diesel, the ranges are between 20 to 40% in cost if we are to use natural gas. So people a lot talk to us about tariff, that we cannot have an increase in tariff given the current situation, and that is correct. Assuming the Lebanese government is able to give its citizen 24/24 electricity, it's only normal that the Lebanese will have to pay a higher cost of kilowatt. And in retrospect, if you calculate it, that cost is not an add-on, because the Lebanese household are paying, as we said earlier, at least 2 electricity bills, whether it's a private generator or the bill that EDL is charging us. In Turkey, for instance, the price of the kilowatt is 13.1 cent versus Lebanon, which is at 9.5. In Sweden, it's at 26.8 cent the kilowatt hour. Obviously, these heavy subsidies made yearly deficits that brought the total of $40 billion of our public debt, specifically catering that industry or that sector. So what's the solution? The solution, I mean, it's funny, I have it all on one slide, and since the 90s, they haven't been able to find a solution. But I mean, if you have a proper team that sit and implement this with the proper political will, I think that on the distribution level, by having proper smart meters, this could increase the L revenue by 25%. And this is data that we've studied and that are viable if there is a serious commitment to implement these changes. On the transmission level, if my memory serves me well, there's a loan or a grant, I'm not sure, for around $225 million to upgrade our transmission network. That's within a master plan. And then there's a 2-kilometer connection in Mansouriye that once connected to that loop will reduce our technical losses by around 5%. And obviously, you will have to install, you need a security mix between your new power plants, whether combined cycle or traditional ones, along with a mix in renewables, which is solar, wind, and hydro, because we have the capacity to that. And for the normal power plant, we will have to tap into natural gas, which will have a direct impact on our fuel bill. Now, that being said, with what's happening in the world today, the price of oil have seen record low. This in the short term will have a direct impact on Lebanon's fuel bill. But obviously this is not sustainable. So this is why the solution has to be holistic. So in 2011, back to our story, I had to do the small presentation about the state of Lebanon's electrical sector. In 2011, there was a eureka moment again, because the UNDP released the Wind Atlas for Lebanon, and where it showed the proper corridors that are available in Lebanon for us to eventually erect these farms. Like a lot of entrepreneurs, we took that study and we started looking for the appropriate lands all over Lebanon. Initially, we started in Akkar, in the plains of Akkar, because of obviously the civil war in Syria that started in 2011. We had to find a different site from the plains of Akkar to a mountain/ridge area to have this project implemented. In 2012, as part of its commitment to 12% renewables by 2020, the Lebanese government and the Ministry of Energy launched the first EOI, expression of interest, to have the first wind farm project in Lebanon. Our company was one of the 4 companies who submitted, who applied for that tender. And 3 companies went to the next round. And as you know, this timeline is now we're seeing the figures, but it was a very lengthy process because of various factors, one of which was the political climate in Lebanon and the impact of the Syrian civil war on Lebanon. Between 2015, 2018, the Lebanese government decided that the 3 applicants for the wind farms will have to move ahead, and they signed with all 3 companies in 2017 at 10.75 cents the kilowatt hour. In 2018, the PPA, actually we were awarded the project at 10.75, and the PPA, which is the power purchase agreement, which is an agreement between us as private companies and the Lebanese government. We signed that agreement for 20 years. They did a bit of, let's say, we had to get our negotiation, to get our prices down from 10.45 cents the kilowatt to 9.6 cents the kilowatt hour. And this is honestly one of the lowest prices that the Lebanese government in the actual context will be paying for. Obviously, a PPA, a power purchase agreement, has to fulfill all the requirements of international lenders, and it has to follow the best practices for this type of projects. So the wind farm project is in Akkar. We have 3 companies. We have Hawa Akkar, we have Sustainable Akkar, and we have Lebanon Wind. So the total of 227 megawatt. To put this into context, once these 3 wind farms who are close to one another They start in a small and beautiful town called M'Aible, and it ends in a village called Fnaide. We have around 14 municipalities that will be directly and indirectly impacted from these three projects. And again, these are neighboring projects, so they're on the same ridge, if you want, or three different ridges, but neighboring one another. Why the area? Because the area, as you can see in my screen in the middle, there is this picture where you have in violet, these are the wind speeds as initially presented by the UNDP study. And it starts at 300 meters for Hawa Akkar, and the highest point in LWP is 2,200 meters from the sea level. So in a couple of words, once these three projects are operational, they'll be eventually giving electricity for in excess of 200,000 homes all over Lebanon. We did a tender where, because we're a private company, we did a tender where we invited 3 international companies to take part of it. And General Electric, GE from the US, was the winner for the 3 projects. And I have put the figures in the graph below. You'll see that the capex for the 3 projects is around $450 million. And this investment, again, it's not your typical project in Lebanon. This investment is made by the private sector and supported obviously by international lenders that have all sets of requirements. Interesting figures that I would like to discuss. Yes, there will be around 43 turbines that will be installed in these 3 projects: Sustainable Akkar, Lebanon Wind, and Hawa Akkar. We will have hopefully more visibility on the impact of COVID-19 on the commercial operational date, but we're targeting November of 2021. The benefits of this project, we like to call this project as a cornerstone for the new Lebanon. There's a romantic side to the story. If you have 100 people sitting and discussing this project, I can guarantee you that 99 out of the 100 would say that this project is never going to happen, while the last one of the 100 is going to say, you guys are crazy for doing this project. But this project, we really believe that this could be a case study for all upcoming projects between the private sector and the public sector. And we have a responsibility to make it work. And after 10 years, it has become a personal, let's say, a personal commitment to see the light after that long journey. So we have, as you can see, we are in discussions with 4 international financial institutions that will support us with 85% of the debt. So we're getting fresh US dollars into Lebanon from 4 institutions: DFC in the US, the European Investment Bank from Europe, FMO from the Netherlands, and hopefully IFU from Denmark. We have partnered with one of the biggest French companies in renewables, Aquatersus Energy. They will be partners with us and shareholders with us to develop this first wind farm project in Lebanon. And obviously, when you want to tap into international institution, you'll have to submit to the rules and regulation of the EIB and IFC and what have you. This is a very important project that will have a direct impact on the levels of pollution in Lebanon, obviously, because it's renewable. And it's a mix that us as a sovereign country would need to fulfill this very important gap. The importance of this project in Akkar. Akkar is a lovely place, lovely people, multicultural, a bit like everywhere in Lebanon, but Akkar sadly has been forgotten by the central state, by the central government. We all know that story, we're not gonna go into that, but the project is gonna create in excess of 500 direct jobs for the 2 years of construction. The project will have a financial footprint of around $2 million per year through rent income, income for neighboring lands that fall next to the turbines where they'll be installed, and a buffer zone of around for noise that will directly get financial remuneration from this project. We have yearly CSR programs for most of the municipalities, and these are yearly earmarked budgets that will target vulnerable groups, whether it's women, minorities, children, and what have you. Obviously, to get these equipments from the Tripoli port to the site, we would need to do some major infrastructure upgrades, an estimated capex of around $15 million. Clean energy means reduction of CO2. Reduction of CO2 means better health for the people living in Akkar, less respiratory diseases and asthma for children, which is one of the main problems that these communities face up there. And lastly, some people do not like that, but no more illegal hunting next to the project site. I won't take more time from your questions, but this is a project that's serious. It's hard work. You have to do things according to international standards. Some of the studies that we've done, geotechnical studies, and environmental impact and social impact studies, and these are really very serious, and it's something completely new for us. In retrospect, we should have really spent a lot of time on the social part, because it's very important to engage the communities early on. And when I say engage the communities, it's not only الفعاليات بالمنطقة, it's to really engage from people across the board, from different backgrounds, for them to feel as part of that process for social acceptance. And obviously now we have a learning curve that we are ready to put for all Lebanese stakeholders, whether to do a renewable energy project or a different project. We are here, 2020, going into 2021. There's a new act in our play, and this act is what we're seeing today, the perfect storm. Post October 17, things are different than pre-October 17th. We have a breakdown in our financial system, and this will create some anxiety with the lenders. Lebanon has technically go into default. Now we have COVID-19. Also, this will have an impact on our timeline. But that being said, the motto that we try to tell our team and ourselves is either we give up, or we give in, or we give all that we got to make this dream a reality. And after 10 years, Elias, it's no longer about the money, but it's about the footprint that this country is our country, and the effort that we'll be putting is for future generations, because no one is going to build it on our behalf. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salah, for this great presentation. It's a very interesting project, and it's a huge project at the scale of Lebanon. So for the questions, let me share the screen. Let's go through them. So the first question, Salah, is how did you manage to sustain your business and payrolls due to the almost multiple years of delays from the government?
Thank you very much for that question, Anonymous. The first 3 years, I relied on my family, who supported me. But after 3 years, إنه خلاص خي بدك تدبر حالك, you have to go on your own. So I took my first loan from Bank Audi, and that loan, I closed it in 2017 or 18, when I got a big investor who believed in my dream. And I sold him the majority of the company, me and the entrepreneurs that were initially part of the team or part of the dream. So we sold the majority to an investor who believed in that dream, and this is how we made it. And this is a very important question, because it's not if you have money, you can make a project. You can start developing any type of project that you set your mind to, by the tools that you have, and organically you're gonna get through this higher power. You'll get where you want to get to.
Okay, so for the next question,
yeah,
for the fuel switching option to gas, are you sure that EDL generators are gas compatible? If not, what to do with these stranded assets?
Like I'm not an expert بموضوع traditional power plants يلي عنا اياهم بلبنان. بس yes, what I understand is هول بيشتغلوا on dual fuel ولا tri fuel, and gas is one of the option to that. So that being said, for the power plants that do not have that option, في capex بينحط where they can accept natural gas and they can run on natural gas. It's a technology that's quite old, and again نرجع هون إلى political will ليكون في a holistic approach to solve the issue of the electricity in Lebanon.
Okay, and for the third question, is the electricity only to be used locally, or do you plan on upgrading the transmission network to other areas?
لا, نحن our mandate ولا ال PPA, which is the power purchase agreement that we have signed with the Lebanese government, our mandate is to generate electricity and actually build a substation on behalf of EDL and give it to EDL, give the substation to EDL for a symbolic figure of $1, and distribution and transmission is up to EDL. This doesn't fall within our scope.
Okay. Can you tell us about the social acceptance of the community to this project?
Yes, sure. I mean, there's not one rule, because in each area we had to use different approaches, and this is through the fact, Elias, that when you have a municipality, you go and sign directly with the municipality your agreement, because they are the owners of these land, and when you have ownership by individuals, it's a negotiation with the families directly. But the main challenge was for us, whether it's with the municipalities or with the private landowners. And you know, Akkar is a quite small community. So if you have an agreement with a certain person, his neighbor who's not benefiting from the project, you're gonna be quite certain that he's gonna be one of the opposing parties to that project. So this is why, and we realized late in the game that we need to engage with the whole community as a whole. Yani, our project, Ilyas, we're not selling a used car. مشروع بتجي بتبيعه وبتمشي. لا, this is a 20-year marriage between the company and the community. And obviously, it's very hard to have 100% acceptance. But I'm proud to say, with the last 6 months, we've been really focused on broad community support by really highlighting what is the importance of this project to the community. Yani, tomorrow you would have schools that will eventually need to go to Akkar, either from Beirut or from the south or from Jabal Lebanon or from the Bekaa. These people, to arrive to site, they need a 3-hour ride. They need to sleep there. They need to eat there. They'll do some learning on renewables. There will be, you know, it's a whole ecosystem that could be or should be and will be created from these 3 wind farm projects.
One technical question here. So does the project have storage options like batteries?
No, this project is purely feed in the network. Yani there is wind, you throw to the network. No wind, no electricity.
Yeah. And could you tell us more about the difficulties you encountered in funding your project and winning the bid?
Again, this is
in few words, please.
Sorry about that. I mean, this is a great question. Well, yes, لازم نعمل another one of these, you know, sessions, because it's important, and this is what entrepreneurs look like. Listen, the main challenge today is your country is in default. يعني اللي بده يجي يدينك, people who want to come and give you debt, they want to know that eventually that debt will be paid back. So today, this is the main challenge. And for that, we would need a proper reform program by the Lebanese government that's acceptable to these international organizations that are going to come and bail out Lebanon. And the advice, I'm reading the question, the last question, the advice I would give entrepreneur in the energy sector that don't have access to political connection. I mean, listen, if you guys still believe that the ruling political class is gonna stay the same after 17th of October, then let's all of us leave Lebanon. And this is a reality. There is a change that is happening, and we as Lebanese, we need to create a new system where people who have good ideas that are sustainable for the country should have an equal opportunity like anyone else. We know a lot of people, we're friends a lot of people, but this process took us 10 years. If a proper reform plan is done, لنحرر إن كان قطاع الكهرباء ولا غير قطاعات في مستقبل لهذا البلد. Until then, it's going to be very hard to do proper business, quote unquote, with no serious revamp of the way we do business in that country.
Thank you, Salah, for this great intervention. It was nice having you with us, and for sure we will look forward for the collaboration together.
Inshallah. Thanks, Amit. Good luck,
yes.
Menna.
Yes. So now we move to our last but not least speaker, Menna Sabry. So Menna is the managing director of the Cleantech Arabia, with a focus on private sector development through entrepreneurship and MSE programs. She is also a project manager at Chemonex Egypt Eco-Industrial Department. Menna has trained over 120 potential entrepreneurs and provided consultation to over 30 founders. working directly with startups in the waste management, renewable energy, agro industry, and handicraft sectors to develop their market research and marketing plans as well as their business models. So thank you for joining us today, Menna. It was like a great pleasure to have you. So without further delay, I'll leave you to lead on your presentation. So please feel free to share your screen. You're on mute, Menna, if you can unmute.
Thank you, Ilyas. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Menna Sabry, and I'm the Managing Director of Cleantech Arabia. Cleantech Arabia is based in Egypt, and we work in a couple of other countries like Tunisia and Sudan. Cleantech Arabia is a non-profit organization with a mission to advance job creation, local economic development, and environmental protection in the Arab world. We've designed the mechanism along cluster development methodology. We support cleantech startups and MSEs, the surrounding ecosystem of operating entities and service providers, as well as the market at large. We try to act as a catalyst of clean technology markets and clusters. So what do? We focus on clean tech markets. So for the ecosystem part, we focus on the network of organizations, including investors, customers, government agencies who are interested in clean technology and sustainability practices. As for the clients, those are the people and businesses who are interested in clean technology services and products, like international donors or like CSE departments and businesses. As for the startups and MSEs, we provide incubations and accelerators to entrepreneurs who are focusing on the clean tech sector, mainly waste management, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture and food production, and water management. Today, I will discuss with you the intersection between sustainable energy in the agriculture sector. Oops, I forgot. Our impact in numbers. We worked with 155 startups, and out of those, 110 are still operating. We've conducted 50 ideation workshops. I'm sorry about the dog. Every time I tell him I have an important meeting, please don't bark, he barks. So I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. We conducted 7 incubation cycles and 4 acceleration cycles. We've supported 6 incubators, whether to start a department for clean technology or to start altogether. We've had around 50 trainers that we've trained, and we've influenced around 3 major policy reforms. The startups that we've been working with had 1.2 billion Egyptian pounds of revenues in 2018, and they've created around 5,000 jobs, and 74% of them invest in R&D. The average age of the startups is 3 years, and we've facilitated 20 million EGP of angel investment. Now I will be discussing the intersection again between sustainable energy and the agriculture sector. In general, as Mr. Salah said, the MENA region is suffering from energy deficiency in general. However, there are some countries that have surplus. Furthermore, the annual food imports are valued at approximately 12 million USD, which is 10 to 35% of total imports in the MENA region again. In 2014, food and beverages was ranked 3rd in terms of value per investment among industries in MENA region. On a macro level, many MENA countries face challenges as they spend more than 5% of their export earnings and net remittance on food imports. So in general, I think these 2 slides show the importance
well, regardless of the numbers, but we can all agree that there is a huge importance of food security in the MENA region, and having surplus is the way to go when it comes to energy. Now the intersection between agriculture sector and energy. Agriculture sector does not consume much energy. For example, in Egypt, energy consumption in the agriculture sector is around 6% of total energy consumption. However, energy is an extremely important element in agriculture. For example, it's used in breeding animals, for hot water, and many other applications. Also, energy is constitute of 30% of farmer spending. At Cleantech Arabia and Chemonics Egypt, we've had a study that we've done. With the IFC, which is World Bank. The report analyzed the performance of 20 photovoltaic startups, which have collectively installed around 112 megawatts, which is 90% of Egypt's PV system. The startups have an average of 3 years and approximately 16.8 million Egyptian pounds in investments. They have achieved collectively revenues of 79.5 million Egyptian pounds in the first half of 2017. The impact of the systems installed by those startups can be translated into saving 56 million liters of gasoline per year. So with focus on these startups, so we can understand the intersection between the energy sector and the agriculture sector. One of the main findings was that there are diverse business opportunities in the agriculture sector when it comes to energy, which are not utilized in Egypt, and I think in the MENA region as well. One of these, so these are examples of the business opportunities that we've mapped, and we worked with startups and MSEs to work in these opportunities. The first one is alternative solid fuel from agri-waste, which is solid waste, solid fuel produced from agri-waste to be used in energy-intensive industries in a shredded or pelleted form. The second one is solar dryers and low-cost solar thermal water heaters for agriculture. Solar dryers can be easily manufactured and sold to farmers to dry vegetables or fruits as a value addition to their produce. Also for water heaters, large size of the local energy use in the simple homes and farms, particularly in the rural areas, has a big market. The biogas units for small cattle holders can be sold to small cattle holders to produce thermal energy to replace natural gas or butane tanks in water heating. Also, PV powered equipment like lighting or ventilation systems or pesticides, sprayer, battery chargers. These are devices to be sold like self-powered equipment with diverse applications. Also off-grid photovoltaic and PV pumping and power applications. These are very important to the agriculture sector, or to produce pure water for domestic uses or irrigation, where the available water contains large amounts of salt. Also off-grid hybrid PV systems. These are systems that are off-grid and aim at providing the farm with electric energy for general uses, to be a complementary manner with electric energy generated by diesel. So other findings, we've So we've worked with these 20 startups to understand their business models and to understand what kind of problems are they facing in order to sell PV systems to farmers, whether small farmers or big farmers. And we wanted to understand also the market barriers to increase or to enlarge this market and to activate it. So the first part, which was the most popping, is the absence of effective customer finance mechanisms, which creates capital burden on PV startups. So in general, renewable energy system usually require the customer to commit high capex upfront with the promise of payback in the form of energy savings. However, as we all know, like farmers they always have problem with سيولة الفلوس, like cash liquidity. So they keep on spending and spending and spending for like around 6 months until they have their produce and they start selling it. Whether you're a supplier or a client, you will always have a problem with farmers, because if you're a supplier, you need to get the money. However, they don't have liquidity. And if you're a client, you need to pay upfront because, again, they don't have liquidity, so they need any kind of money that they can get. So when it comes to PV systems, this is a huge problem, because you're asking them to pay upfront a very big number. And the lack of access to finance creates a bigger problem, because nobody can trust the other in order to do like the loans or anything like that. So this is the biggest barrier to all farmers across segments, whether he has one feddan or he has thousands of feddans. This is the biggest problem. Hence, unlocking customer financing barriers could have a very significant impact on growth for the sector. So, which is basically long-term schemes, providing them with long-term schemes in order to pay the PV systems is like, it would unlock a huge portion of this market. Other options that we found out in different countries actually is linking mobile payment applications and fintech solutions. Could also be an important milestone in financing customers. So for one example is M-Kopa in Kenya. Farmers pay their installments through their mobile. So they go buy like scratch cards like we used to have with phones. So they buy like, I don't know, like for £50 a month. And these are the installments that they pay for the PV system. And they have some kind of a lock over the PV system so that they cannot take it, or to ensure that they can pay. So this was one of the very good examples that we've referred to in our study. The other problem is limited client awareness and risk aversion. So since the target of these systems are usually farmers, whether small or big, but they still have a problem with awareness and like buying the idea of PV in general. They know the problems they're facing with diesel, and however, they need to see like a very good example of a PV system for a similar farmer, that it's working and he's not suffering of anything. So that's partially a solution that can be done. The other problem is there is a disconnect between value chain entities. So their collaboration to develop the PV market would enable this market. And they can, like, different value chain entities can play a key role in shaping the market. For instance, financial institutions can play an essential role in enabling project finance in the sector. The agriculture co-ops can help farmers with مثلا with the finance or like to tell them more about the PV systems to ensure like the client awareness is tackled. So these are the market barriers that we've seen. There are other barriers that are related to the PV startups in specific. However, they told me I've got 12 minutes. So I've decided to leave this one out. However, this is the study that we've done. It's a World Bank Group study, and that's the name of it, just in case you would like to read it. And here are my contacts. Thank you very much, and I hope everyone is safe at home and healthy, and happy Ramadan.
Thank you, Menna, for joining us today and for this interesting presentation. And happy Ramadan to you and your family and to all our listeners. Let's see if you have any questions for Menna. Please join on Slido and type in your question for Menna to answer. Okay, so I believe with that we will this will be our like the end of our session. Thank you so much, Menna, again for joining.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
I'm looking forward for future collaboration as well together. So in this session we had Salah and Menna covering the energy